Good evening, darlings. I'm excited about tonight.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
actually my anxiety is a little bit high, actually. Because this subject is so sensitive for so many reasons. And even like I was trying to make an AI image, it wouldn't
Uh-huh.
create an AI image based on domestic violence. That's how sensitive it is out there, right? But I was able to do a little quick little video and tell people that we're talking about domestic violence. And the thing that blows my mind, and the reason why I wanted to bring Dr. Antoria Gillum in here tonight is because she has mastered domestic violence and the mindset of not only the perpetrator but also the victims.
Yeah.
They can reverse engineer the impact. So I'm excited to have her here tonight, and I'm going to let her, if you don't mind, because I'm just going to let her just open up and dive
Go
into
ahead. Go ahead.
defining what domestic violence is. Because sometimes, like when I was in a domestic violence situation, I didn't know it was domestic violence. I just thought we were having issues, and he swung on me and I swung back. That's violence. I didn't know
Yeah.
that
Oh
it was
yeah.
under the category of domestic violence. So I just want to welcome you to our show and thank you so much for being here.
Yes, welcome,
Thank
welcome, welcome. And you're right, it is so many different domestic violence titles. So if you could go into that first, because we all think it's the punching and the hitting, but there's so many more topics to that fall under that category.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for having me as well. Domestic violence is not just with the punching and the hitting, right? It's verbal, it's emotional, it's spiritual as well, to mental as well. Diving deeper into domestic violence. When people hear domestic violence, they automatically think of a spouse.
Right.
They automatically think that is either a woman that's been abused and it's her lover, or her spouse that's the one that's abusing her. Domestic violence is on a different scales, from parents, your siblings, family members, for any form of abuse, anyone that's the perpetrator. So that's something that we like to expose light, that it's
Hmm.
not just a spouse that can cause such.
Yeah. And that's good to know. And there's also the financial domestic violence.
Absolutely.
And coming from uh the industry where females, we're already underpaid, and if we don't think that we can survive on our own,
Mhm.
it'll keep a lot of us there longer.
Yeah.
Have you ran into that? I'm sure you've run into that in your practice. How many years you've been doing this?
Yeah, since 2013, our entire program is around domestic violence, but more so that financial component that you just mentioned, so that we teach domestic violence survivors to become self sufficient while establishing a solid foundation for themselves and their children.
Okay.
So that is something that we that's our life mission now. We teach them different skilled trades so they can become self sufficient, so they're able to get their state license here, and then we also have a workspace for them to be able to work to provide for themselves and their children as well too.
Oh, so is it like a shared workspace or a call center?
It's a shared workspace. We have cosmetology schools, we have barber schools, manicure schools, medical assistants. So we also in the medical side as well. So they do go into hospitals and offices to be able to
Okay.
work. So yeah, it's beauty in medical.
Yeah, and it's one of those transferable skills that you can take anywhere. So that's great that you teach them transferable skills that they can take into any
Mhm.
marketplace.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I was curious about? Typically, when someone goes into what your passion, right? We typically are passionate because it's something in our past that puts us here. So, could you share about how you got into this space? Because you look so young and you've been doing it for how many years? And you look like a baby yourself. So how did it all start?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I come from a domestic violence family, an abuse family on my mom's side and my dad's side, and everyone knows my story. Know that my father was the aggressor, and the relationship. My uncles were as well too. So being raised around it, it was very much so normal. It was like just having a conversation
Hmm.
that just went wrong, right? So there were so many signs that was ignored leading up to the phase of actual punches being contacted.
Oh wow. Okay.
So, being a child, and I was also always caught in the crossfire of domestic violence. At the age of 5, my grandmother, abuser, wanted to try to run her over with a car, hit me in the process,
Oh wow.
broke both of my hips, both of my knees, both of my ankles. I was in a full body cast. They asked my mom to donate my kidneys to a child that could use them because there was no more survival left for me. So that was that. It was just so many other things that happened that I was just always caught in the crossfire of domestic violence. So that's what have connected me to the passion of helping the little ones that can't speak up. They're also being abused emotionally, indirectly, in the homes. And so when you think of domestic violence and abuse, you're thinking of that, the one that's been hit or verbally attacked. But what about the little kid that's in the corner, that's isolated, that's feeling neglected, right? Or that's been neglected, right? How do that individual then grow up in turn to start displaying exactly what they was raised
Exactly. Exactly. And in my line of work, I see that a lot. I see the actions being carried out in play.
around?
So a
Yeah.
lot of times you'll see the child mimic what they see at home. And then it also spills into their relationships as they grow up if there's not any accurate counseling to kind of break the cycle. So I'm glad you're in there. You talk about the children in that piece. Do you have a part for children in your ministry as well?
We do. We have a program called Teen Control. We teach at risk youth how to communicate their emotions effectively without
I like
anger,
that.
so they won't be misunderstood and they can avoid being labeled as troubled teens. It's just, they're just trying to communicate, but they just don't know how to be able to take all of those emotions and put it into one sense.
I know that's right.
Yeah.
Now, Ange and I had a long discussion about this topic because it's such a sensitive topic, and I personally thought that going out talking about domestic violence would trigger some not so favorable um emotions. Sometimes it can trigger it the wrong way for it start a healing but hurt. So I wanted to be real. I wanted to tiptoe around the subject, and Ange was like, "No, let's just talk about it straight on." So, what are your feels about triggers of domestic violence?
The triggers, it's going to be there. It's one of those type of things where you have to, although you are no longer in that space, you
Mm-hmm.
will always have to go through some form of therapy. I'm still in therapy myself. I have a coach as well too. It really shifts the way that you process information.
Mm-hmm.
Someone speaking too loud, there's a trigger.
Okay.
So it's all types of triggers, just not talking about the subject. Ongoing living, domestic violence in the workspace. It's hard to work with people that have overcame or been through domestic violence because they
Yes.
always feel threatened. So you
Mm.
have to be very soft on how you handle a difficult conversation with the individual. Um,
Right.
so I think that it's something that needs to be addressed because it doesn't have a face on it. A lot of people want to take domestic violence and put it in poverty. But what about the ones that looks like you and I,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
right?
and to that point, because of that, there are a lot of domestic violence doesn't have a gender, nor does it have a financial status or class, because there are very wealthy folks who also are being abused. You think about it, you see it in act out all the time, and it was just recently played out on social media with beloved Kiki Palmer. So it
Yeah,
happens all over, and folks are ashamed of the story. And I'm glad that she actually stood up for herself. A lot of folks, not just women, they don't. This crime goes unreported, so the
yeah,
statistic is a lot higher than what we see nationally.
yeah. Agreed.
And how do you reach those ones? Like
Really,
how does someone
you
come
know
to
what,
you?
hold on a second. I wanted her to still talk on the part of where how she got into this because we still didn't hear about when she was a teenager, right? You said it started happening when you were a teenager, or was it when you were younger?
Oh no, when I was younger. So I was hit with a car when I was 5 years old.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
At what age, like what clicked for you? At what age, where were you? What was going on that made you say, you know what, I need to go into this direction?
When I became a young adult, I someone said something to me that really hit me, and they said, "Your dad have really messed you up." And they said the other words, but and I started to think about it because here I am. I'm a woman and I'm a lady, and I couldn't even cry.
That's
It
right.
was so hard for me to cry,
Wow. Okay.
and to where I had to go through therapy. I had people that was literally praying over me for hours just so that I can break through and cry. And I was trying to cry like, "Ugh, I'm trying to cry." It would not come. I was that
Wow.
vulnerable space I just cannot be in. And that's when I knew I had to have another conversation with my dad. Like, hey guy, you really, really did one.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that, I couldn't sleep. I used to have nightmares. I used to wake up and call the women and apologize because although I was a little girl, I couldn't help them. And I used to say, "I'm sorry that I couldn't protect you." Right? I'm
Okay.
sorry. Right? And they
Mhm.
were like, "No, Tori's, come down, come. It's okay. It's okay." So I started to go into shelters, and I wanted to just give back and go to shelters to give back. And I've always done hair, and as a cosmetologist, that was my go-to. That was my safe space to
Mhm.
just get away and cope. So I went to the shelter to volunteer solo to just do hair, and I wanted to do their hair, and I thought that I wanted to connect them to who they were before the abuse, and I told
Mhm.
myself all of this of giving back. Well, being there, a lot of the women that hadn't cried broke down crying.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. I saw this one lady, I was sitting in a chair, and I'm sitting here and she's sitting like this way. So I'm sitting here and she's sitting this way. Instead of her looking at me eye to eye, her head was straight, but her eyeballs was like looking at me like this, and she was talking to me. And that when God started sharing with me strong codes and said, see how she wants to be there, but she can't shift.
Mhm.
So then I went and I said, okay, I got to study this thing. I know, going into the word, but I really got to see it, the mental of what happened in the brain. So I went to school, started studying the brain and psychology, and got my degree into that to start putting the puzzles together. Then it just became an overall organization. It just became something. So it came from a nightmare.
Wow.
Now we have 9 locations. Total we have with 5 in Dallas. We have in Dallas, Texas. We have 2 locations in Houston, 1 location in Oklahoma. We have a location also in West Africa, Liberia. Um, so it just began to just blossom,
Mhm.
and we do this full time. And so yeah, so a lot of people see what we're doing, and they are like, oh my gosh, you're doing such a great work, this is so good.
Absolutely. 'Cause I'm here to tell you
But they
so.
don't know where it came from, and it came from hell. It came from, I mean, just
Right.
going through that. Your journey will take you through places that you never want to revisit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When I was in my 30s, maybe early 40s, that was the first time I ever cried.
Mm,
And it's because I came from a situation like that. And when you said that you actually got hit with the car, I remember my stepfather coming down the street in one of them 1970 Cadillacs, and he was going to run my mother over with the car, and we were running from him.
mm,
And she told us to get out the way. She said, "Move, get out the way." He said he's going to hit me with the car. And I was like, "Mom, no, come on, let's run." She's like, "No, he's just going to keep following us." She said, "Move back. I know how to brace myself."
mm,
And I'm like, how do you know how to brace yourself for a car hit, right? But
mm,
my mother doesn't remember any of this day. She has a blank for her. But me and my brother, we remember it. And so the car came and it hit, and she flew up on the hood. And the craziest part about this, we had just left her girlfriend's house. We were hiding there, which wasn't far from our house. And he knew what street we were on because we couldn't get but so far.
Mhm.
I, being a teenager, I took a butcher knife out the house, and I was going to hurt him. So when she flew up on that car, I came up with a knife like this, running after him. And I just heard my mother just scream. It was screeching, "Angela, no!" And then I stopped and I was heaving with the knife like this. And then he was going to the back of the car and he was jingling keys and walking to the trunk of the car. And my mother said, "Come on, y'all, his gun, he's getting his gun." He had a big long rifle. It was kids around and everything. He didn't care. and he was going to the trunk of his car to unlock it. And she said, Angela, let's go, let's go. And he said, you bring her back to the house, I'm going to kill her. And I lived with that. So I never knew how to cry. I wanted to be vulnerable, like you said, but it just wasn't in there. There was no space in there. And then finally, one time I was disappointed in a relationship, and the guy, he had moved on. I don't even remember who the guy was, but he had moved on, and I finally cried. And
Mm.
I was so happy to feel pain. I was like ecstatic, like, oh my God, I'm hurting.
Just,
Thank God.
I know you just wanted to embrace it. It's like, oh, it's here.
Crying.
Yeah, yeah.
It's wild. So yeah, and it's interesting because me and my brother, we were more impacted by that nightmare than she was because she blanked it out.
Oh wow.
So she doesn't walk with it, but we do.
Yeah,
You know, we have that memory. So
yeah.
when you said that, girl, the car hit and all that, that just really hit home. And guess what? We were back in that house 4 days later.
Mm.
Wow. Wow. So, Doctor, how do you break through to women who haven't got to the point where you and Angie got to put are crying? Like, what are your steps to bringing them to the realization that you're worthy of your tears, and God bottles those up, and you can take that from a place of pain to pursue a passion.
When you hear meet a person where they are, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes we take our time, and
Hmm.
sometimes it's urgent. You have to leave now. And sometimes they don't know how to leave, but we want them to leave fully and wholly, right? With their whole heart. So sometimes they may not leave right away. Um, but you get them to be able to connect to the part that they have completely just erased.
Mm.
Because what's so relevant right now is the abuse. And what's so relevant right now is what the abuse have caused me not to feel as worthy. And that is so relevant that it have now became my reality.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
See? So to get them to connect back to that what they have forgotten, um, how do you put a time with that?
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes it's easier to do it quicker than later. It's better sooner than later. But you really have to, and to think about it, when a person say, I feel alone, it's not that they really feel alone, like it's billions and billions of people in this world, so you can't really feel alone when there's so many people that's here. But what that really means is that I feel alone with the emotion that I am feeling right now, because really in all actuality you are alone in that feeling, because I don't feel what you're feeling in this very moment. So
Hmm.
that's the space that they feel that they're alone. Find out how to get into that space so they don't feel alone.
Okay.
And that's why, although I have, although growing up in abuse and going through abuse myself as an adult, although I'm free, I never detach myself from what it used to be like.
Oh, okay.
And that's how I know how to continue to stay connected with those that are currently in it.
Now, is your organization a safe space? Like, is it known? Like, can ladies do? Is there an exit strategy? I guess I'm trying to say. Like, do you
Yeah.
have a safe house for ladies or gentlemen to run to? And is it broken down by gender? Because again, like I said, domestic violence doesn't have a face. It's not a male or a female thing because anybody can be abused. How do you handle safe spaces when someone says, okay, I can't take this no more, or a sister finally talks another sister into leaving, but they need a strategy? Do you
Right.
work through those strategies?
We do. So we
Okay.
work through the strategies. We have partners, so you can't do it by yourself. It's just like any other thing. This is something you really need partners, real strong partners to help with. We do have a safe house. We have a maternity home for moms that are fleeing domestic violence, that are with child, that are
Hmm.
pregnant, and so they get to, also the maternity home have turned into a birthing center, so
Oh,
they also get to have birth and give birth there as well too. And
Okay.
then once they're there, they move back once they're ready and go through the trauma and the very deep trauma. Then we help them get into their own apartments. We pay up their rent for a year, fully furnish the apartment.
Oh, wow.
Also, while they're there, we help them everything that they need for their babies, clothing, um, diapers, whatever they need, whatever that the stressor is, we lessen that stressor. It's hard to become free from anything when you have so many barriers and stressors in the way. So we just eliminate all of those stressors for them.
Now, also, is there now when like I told you before, I was on the board for our local safe house here in Pennsylvania, and a lot of things stop folks from leaving, like including not being able to take their pets with them.
Mhm.
Does your space allow them to bring, their pets or stuff like that?
So when you speak about domestic violence and that it doesn't have a face in a gender or financial status, also with animals, they become abused as well too. So because this is the heart of the program, we don't leave anyone out. We do have partners that accept pets, and then we still keep them very much so connected until we're able to get them into a safe space together in their own apartments.
Okay.
You know
Wow.
what? I was curious that when we were behind stage and we were talking, could you unpack again how you learned to master the mindset of the perpetrator and the mindset of the victim, as well how you were taught that?
Not only was I became intrigued with it,
Like
like became,
what you mentioned about your father.
and yeah, I became infused with it. I would see how my father will, I mean, would just hit women and to like you can even recognize them. And
Wow.
then I would see him bathe them when it's all done. And I would see them accept what they saw, thought was love. And then I began to kind of look at it sideways, like, what? So I
Yeah.
began to study patterns and study behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And it just became something that I became just my life. I was fascinated. I needed to know, like,
That's
why
right.
would you do that? Why would you go back? What, you have a door here. He's not,
Mhm.
what, that I understood fear, right? Fear of lack of resources, fear of being able to having to start all over again, fear to being a single mom or just not having the support. So fear of being judged. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of different components. And then I began to make the connection with all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why our program have been very mighty successful, because I was there in the homes. I saw it almost every other day
Yeah.
where abuse would break out in out of nowhere. Like everybody having a good time, and
Yep.
all of a sudden abuse would just break out in the like that didn't even cause for abuse. Why even why? So I was so I was around it so much that I just had to, it became just something I needed to figure out. It became
Mm-hmm.
a study. And then I just began to research it,
Mm.
to where the survivors now that, was with my family, whether it was my uncle, my dad, or cousins, it became, I began to research and take notes. This one didn't do that, but then she did this way, and then he did it this way. Then what is the connection with this thing, and how does it go deeper? Then I found out that a lot of those that were abusers would then yet abuse themselves when they,
Wow.
and a lot of it was in been molested as children themselves. So
So so when you figured out, like when you went back and examined the mindset of those being abused, was it more so from um an emotional hold, do you think, or was it isolation, or was it a cultural thing that they learned?
as far as the one that was being abused or the one that
Yeah,
was,
the one that was accepting the punishment, and you said you would watch him then bathe them, and they accept that as love.
it was a feeling of just being invisible.
Oh, okay. Okay.
If I don't say
Wow.
nothing, they won't notice I'm here.
Mm.
If I do everything right, then it's almost impossible for me to do something wrong. If I do it exactly like it needs to be done, it's just a feeling of just being invisible.
Okay. Wow, that hearing stories like that remind me of the whole Tina Turner story, and like that, even successful as she was, you know, she still had that burden hanging over her until she just ran.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it's a lot. It's very courageous for folks to get the strength or get their voice back to actually leave that situation.
Yeah.
Um, we talked about the age. There's no age limit. So there are senior citizens being abused. There are teenagers being abused. What are some of the tools? How do you differentiate between the age gap of the abusers or those being abused? Because every program don't fit every age. So how do you break that down to minister to those folks where they are?
So we have a with the research I've done through the many years, I've created an actual workbook.
Okay.
The workbook helped me to find out exactly where the individual is psychologically, emotionally. A lot of times I can have somebody in front of me that's 25, 26, 27 years old, but they're functioning emotionally as a 12-year old.
Wow.
And so it just depends, um, what's going to be more so, um, in good, better interest of the individual that's sitting in front of you.
Mhm.
Everybody, it is different. You cannot cater to everybody the exact same. The need is different.
Um, let's unpack some of the myths about domestic violence. Again, one of them is that it's always somebody provoked it. Explain that myth and where did it come from?
I think that is true. I
But
think it
wait,
is.
you mean like that when they tell me, say, see what you made me do to
Yeah,
you?
I know.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
Okay.
it's the opposite way though. I think that they are being provoked within triggers within them own selves,
right.
and
Mhm.
they're just displaying what's already internal.
Hmm. Yeah.
Don't think that is anyone could cause you. You can't. I didn't cause you to hit me. I didn't cause. It's not my fault. It's not their fault to be
Mhm.
abused. Nobody asked to be abused. But that provoking, I think, is something that they are continuously dealing with every single day. That they wake up, they walk around, they go to sleep. It's almost like what's the word for it? It's like torture within themselves.
Yeah.
Like a demon just inside of them, taunting them constantly.
That part,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Hmm.
And as ministers, though, how do you address that in the church when a child comes to you? For instance, in my cases, I've had children come up to me saying, "I don't want to go home because I know that so and so is going to be there." So how do you address that with, children um, who are afraid to go home because it's not a safe space for them?
Well, for one, um, any child that speak to that capacity should be really taken serious because
Right.
children don't really do that often, right? They don't, because they're the ones that's trying to save everybody.
Yeah.
They're the ones that want to keep the family together. They're the ones that, don't want to say anything because, so for a child to speak to that capacity, it should always be number one priority. In churches, just like any other organization, should already have resources set in place.
Yeah. And a lot of times the kids they take blame. It's my fault. If I wasn't bad, he wouldn't have got mad or she wouldn't have got mad, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, that blame still goes saving. Hey, it's
Mhm.
my fault, not her fault.
Not
It's
her
my
fault.
fault.
Yeah.
I did it. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those type of thing where they're still trying to save the one that is being abused, and so they take that and put it on themselves.
You know that when you mentioned about how you experience that as a kid and you grow up in your relationships, it impacts your relationships. And say, for instance, in a situation where like you and I couldn't cry. So when I was married, my whole thing is if we raise our voices, if the voices start getting raised, or I jump up and I'm in your face or you in my face,
Oh
then
yeah.
there's going to be punches. And so therefore, I'm not going to allow anything to escalate. So therefore, I didn't argue in my marriages. I just would get quiet, and I would be just real adamant about
Mhm.
not saying nothing because you're going to have to calm down.
Yeah.
So my lack of engaging in the confrontation of whatever it is that we needed to confront made them feel, because I was married twice, made them both feel like they weren't loved by me, like I didn't care. And
Yeah.
it was like, no, the bottom line is I don't want to snap because see, if I've already pulled at a 14-year-old, I already pulled the knife out on my father. If I
Yeah.
snap, what will I do to you? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I mean, and even I remember one time he was instigating an argument. He was always miserable about something. And I got in this in my first marriage, and I got in the car and I was pulling off because I was like, I am not getting into this. I'm just not going to do it. And he just kept coming around me, just antagonized me, and thinking it was funny and was trying to get a reaction out of me. And I just wouldn't react because, again, everything was shut off. I'm just not doing this. And I had made my mind up, and this is in front of my daughter. I'm not going to let her experience what I experienced.
Yeah.
And I got in my car and I'm pulling off, going down the street, and he thought this was funny. So he jumps up on the back of the car and he's sitting on the car and he's laughing as I'm driving down the street. So I sped up and slammed the brakes
Hmm.
and made him fall off and broke his arm. And then when I got home, he was holding his arm like this. I had no remorse. He was holding his arm like this and he was like, now, see, you going to drive me to the hospital? I said, no, you got a car and use your other arm.
Hmm.
Did not care because you're doing, my thing was, you're doing this all in front of my daughter. But see, look at the meanness that was inside of me because I could not feel.
Yeah, I think that what happened a lot when we have been exposed to abuse, whether that's directly or indirectly, it begins to make us emotionally unavailable.
Yeah, that is so true. That
Mm-hmm.
is so true. And it carries on to the next relationship and the next relationship because now you've been triggered. So soon you see that red flag, you go straight in.
Yeah, but that's just like in any relationship. So everyone cannot just going into a relation in a marriage. It can't be with someone that's just like, oh, okay, I know that person been through that. No, I need for you to really understand all of it. I need for you to understand my triggers because it's really something that that we all will continue to have to, work through. And it's not something that, oh, you just get the therapy and counseling, then you're better. You have to be with the right person that won't even, allow those triggers to even come about, or very careful on how they handle you.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
can't be you can't be mishandled.
That's with, like you said, with any relationship, whether it be a job or anything, because you're right, there is a lot of domestic violence that go on in the workplace. Look at the whole Me Too movement. You know,
Yeah.
that's still domestic violence. It's those sexual assaults in the industries, like music industry, TV industry. All of those things are sexual assaults, domestic
What
violence.
considered domestic violence in corporate spaces?
Yes, that is. That's considered
Because
domestic violence.
it can come off as bullying, as
Yeah,
stalking, um, of that sort, but also in domestic violence, those that are survivors that go into domestic violence, it's a it's a lot of anxiety that takes place in workspace when those that have went through domestic violence. Remember, we are, and I speak for us because I was there and I'm still, we are very fragile at times. You can't, if there's a disagreement and we having a disagreement, okay, you feel your way, I feel my way, we're going to have a disagreement depending on the culture and the environment that I'm from, right, or the person is from. We may use our hands when we're talking. We may, we may be excited when we're
popping
talking.
our heads. Yeah,
But with someone with that have been through abuse, they'll take that like, oh, you about to come for me, right? So it's already a sore space to be with strangers. that don't even know where you come from and your environment or your past. So I totally agree with the workspace.
Yeah.
Do you remember a story, like one of the stories that really stayed with you? Like what's one of the situations that you were in that just stayed with you and you always go to that?
Oh gosh, I don't have just one. I have a couple of them, a lot of them. There was never a one time event. You know how
Hmm.
some people can pull up that one story, and unfortunately, it shouldn't be there to even pull. Let's say that. But I have so many because it was these were daily years.
Hmm.
But there is one when my grandfather, who was he was an addict, and a lot of these individuals were addicts. So let's connect domestic violence to drug abuse
Hmm.
as well too. Um, but my grandfather took me to, when he would get high, he would take me to this my garage that had no windows. It was just a garage, right? And it would be pitch black dark. And I remember these four tires that would be in the garage, and he used to hallucinate and see things. And he would take me and he would say, "Go, go, go, go! They're coming, they're coming!" He would put me in behind the tires, and I would hide as a little girl behind the tires. And then he would close the door and leave me in the garage behind the tire for I don't even know how long. And then when his high came down, he would just open the door like, "Antoria, come on." And then I would just get up and go back in the house like nothing had just happened. Like, "Sir, you just didn't put me in the garage for how long? Because you saw something coming." But he's defense that he was trying to protect me, right? Imagine the level of trauma that
Yeah.
caused,
Wow. Wow.
right? Leading up to all the other events.
Absolutely. Um when I was asking the question, actually I was just thinking about in your work, like one of the stories in your work, like once you as an adult now, one of the situations that stayed with you when you think about the times that you had to rescue people. And I even thought about this, and this one I would like for you to answer more than anything. I know I found myself being very angry at girlfriends that would go back into their domestic violence situation when we got them.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that in your personal circle?
They Yes, I had a sister that was had went through a level of abuse and had went into sex trafficking. And
Mm,
it was one of those experiences like, how could you possibly, when you know the work that I do?
right, right.
How?
Took it personal.
Oh yeah, I'm like, devil, you gonna came too close.
Yeah.
You done came too
That's
close.
what I saw immediately.
Hmm.
Um, but my sister, she didn't want me, still to this day. At times I can't be her sister. At times I have to be Dr. Antoria or Ms. Antoria.
Hmm.
And so having to go back and forth, like, okay, I can't give you a hug. I want to just give you a hug, but no, I can't, because
Hmm.
we're in this, and this is what she need me to be right now for her. And I've made peace to do that and be just what I need to be for whoever at that time.
That's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
That is good, and it's hard because you do have to separate yourself when it's
Yeah.
personal, because a lot of times you just want to shake them, like, "Girl, don't you know?" Or "Boy, don't you know?"
Yeah.
But it's personal,
do
and
I want to know, do you think there are any laws or policies that can be changed that can help better protect people from domestic violence?
In order to in order to really put a stop to domestic violence, and I say this with because of the intense research that I have, um, we need to be, you have to be able to stop it with the children
Mm,
and what they see,
hurting people
because
hurt
they
people.
grow up and they
Yep.
just display it, and they're the ones that become hurt. They become violated,
mm-hmm.
and then in turn that's a whole new generation, because how are we still here, right? It's
Right.
almost like you can't stop people from doing drugs if the drugs are still around,
That's right. That's right.
right?
Yeah.
If so, you just have to get to the core of it,
Hmm.
Yeah.
or we'll ever forever be chasing it.
And I do know that there's a lot of laws being pursued for the transgender community in domestic violence on that aspect because of the inclusion and of it all. And then there's also a lot of laws being to allow them into spaces
Yeah,
because a lot of times they don't seek help because there's nowhere for them to go.
true.
So there is laws on the books regarding that, but as far as the general population, men, female, um, I think there's a lot more that can be done. But I totally agree with you that it got to start with our babies because hurting people hurt people. If we don't get to the source of the bitterness, the root, the anger, and teach folks how to conflict resolution
Yeah,
without using their hands, without using manipulation, without using bullying, because in that whole bullying, that part, you send your dude a sexy pic, the next thing you know, you're all over the internet. That's domestic abuse, domestic violence.
Yeah. I'm curious about what are the challenges that you faced when you were trying to open up the different schools? Because I mean, you've done a lot.
honestly, I have not faced any challenges.
Wow.
Hmm.
We just today got approved 4 additional schools.
Oh wow.
Go
So
ahead. Where are they located?
we are we also in Oklahoma, so they're going to be spreading. And we just got called. I just came from Washington like 2 weeks ago, and I'll be back in a few weeks. Um, it's 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 like God just have he's doing this thing, and
Hmm.
that's how I know this is just not. It's my purpose, it's my mission, but it's so much further than just that. This is something
Yeah.
God have literally allowed me to be placed here to be able to help, because it is such a smooth transition when trying to help. I don't have any hiccups, and think through the grace of God that it's
Wow.
just I'm
That,
able to relate. Um, I'm able to anyone that have been in my office and sat with me, they know they can say it gets real,
Hmm.
and it gets real quick.
so how many facilities do you have total now?
9.
9. And are they all in the United States or are any abroad?
Yeah,
We have
Africa.
one in Africa that's been
Oh,
there
okay.
for 2 years now. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Some good stuff. So why is it during the holidays? Well, I got my own thinking, but I just want you to speak to it. I was telling cousin the other day, I was like, man, this is a great time to bring up domestic violence since the holidays are here. It's supposed to
Hmm.
get turned up. So have you noticed the numbers are higher around the holidays?
I think the numbers are higher with the reflection of just mental illness,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
and let's talk about just the mental illness that comes from just being in an abuse relationship.
Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah,
about the amount of times that that person have been hit in the head? What do you really think that that does to them in their processing, in their
absolutely.
brain?
Yeah.
Does it shake it? Like, what does it do inside? What have it done? What have it changed? Too many blows to the head, and
Girl, yes.
you know what I'm saying. So I think that it becomes the numbers become. It's almost sad to say yes or no to that question because the numbers are what it is daily.
Always. So it's never a spike around. I was even thinking like during the football season
Yeah,
when people be all rowdy on Sundays and the man done lost his game and he got to take that on somebody.
yeah.
Like I'm just thinking about all the different events that triggers that inner pain that the abuser is
Those are
going
some
through.
of those like the holiday seasons as a victim, or like say if a game and the abuser was triggered to just now I'm just going to just start make sure everybody's hurting because I'm
Yeah.
hurting, right? Those are things that I can prepare myself for. It's kind of like that car that you said your mom can embrace because I
Yes,
see it coming.
that's right. Okay.
What gets is when I'm just walking and I just get rocked.
Yeah.
Like, where did
Yeah.
Yeah.
that come from?
Where they come from?
Yeah.
Or I just cooked you dinner and just prepared your meal all day, and then I get it thrown back at me. Like, it's those events that just does something that's so different. It all does
True.
something.
Get
But
what you're saying.
I can see, oh, he's upset. Oh, it's going to be one of those. Okay, let me prepare myself. Let me embrace what's about
Right.
to happen.
Mhm.
And
It's just the moments when you can't see it. It's the unforeseen.
Just like how the people in the islands, they board up the house when they know the storm is coming. But when you don't know the storm is coming, it catches you up, everything gets tore up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the damage is great.
in that isolation of 2020, a lot of a lot of people lost their life because of domestic
And
violence during
COVID.
that time, during COVID,
Mm.
Yeah.
because of the
That's my
isolation and that people didn't know how to you were stuck being with each other all
our
day.
numbers with the amount of people that we served during COVID, for a lot of businesses, they went under. For us during COVID, our numbers spiked
Spiked, yes, I can
times
imagine.
triple. So
I
Hmm.
we
can.
didn't close for COVID. We stayed open 24/7 during COVID.
How do you get the men to speak up, the ones that are being abused? Like, how do you get them to just raise their hand and be like, yes, I need help?
Find a common shared conversation.
Okay,
Start talking about just the different hats that a man wear, like a father, son, just finding that comforting of shared experience,
Hmm.
but
and then allow it to evolve from there.
is it something that they would openly share with a female, or are they more apt to share with a male, another male?
It depends on who were the abuser.
Okay.
Was they abused by a male, or was they abused by a female?
Oh, okay.
Because a lot some abusers are women.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I was like I said, when I was chairing, a lot of the guys, um, they could be buff guys, and the girl was just so aggressive on them, and they didn't tell anybody. And because they were, like, say, the queen or king of high school, you know, it was like they're supposed to be together. So he was like, I don't even want to be with this girl, but I gotta be with her because of my public image. So how does that, transition to you when you're working with teenagers about the safety of public appearance?
Well, when it comes to males, that's what we're discussing, right?
Mhm.
So when it comes to males, I have 4 sons.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't have any girls.
Uh-huh.
So one of the things that I have found in just research is that I'm always trying to hug my sons,
Yeah.
trying to give them more hugs and love,
Mhm.
and give them that space to be able to communicate, right? Men are taught at a very early age that they're the protector.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
supposed to be tough. Like, how you can be, you got to be tough to protect something.
Hmm.
So that's why they don't speak out a lot of times, is because they're saving face. Like, I'm supposed to be
That's
a
right.
protector. I'm not supposed to be crying. I'm supposed to be the one, that's holding everything down. And so at times that is misunderstood.
Yeah.
Mhm. What are some of the warning signs that we can look out for male or female? What are some of the warning signs?
When a person begins to, their level of emotion is not relevant to why they are angry and upset.
Mm, okay.
That's a big one that we overlook. It's like, that's what you're mad about.
Yeah.
And
Right.
your level of emotion
Producing
is like really, really high. And it's like, that ain't even all that to be that mad about. Why are
it.
you that mad for this reason?
Mm, that makes sense.
As an abuser, they will always, of course, isolate the individual only around the people that's not going to address the behavior.
I just say that I was about to say that isolation is another key for us looking from the outside in.
Yeah.
When your friends no longer showing up, that they're being isolated. That's
Or
a clear
the
sign.
person that's maybe being too, some people say if they're sad and they withdrawn, you want to say what's wrong. But what about if you overly happy?
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
I
I
got
hope
I got
so.
to keep this thing up, girl. We
Yeah.
good.
In
Hey,
the time. Oh, yep.
you know, you got to look at that. Like, it just you gotta really, really be in. So no matter where we are, I was at the domestic violence awareness convention, and in Washington. And while I was there, you just can't cut it off.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still gazing no matter where I am. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a store, I'm gazing. If I'm in a doctor's office, I'm looking. I can pretty much tell if a person is being abused.
Yeah.
Like almost like 10 times out of 10. That's crazy. And so some of the people that was there to advocate um, was in a domestic violence. And I literally had the bold enough, thank God, to stand up and say something about it.
What did you do?
I just was given the floor. The lady that was teaching, I said, I will, I just started telling her how many people's here that's being abused.
Oh
Because now
wow.
we think that we're here, and now our hats, our lids should be closed
Right. And
because we
this
all advocates
is
and we're all here. What about the advocates that are being abused? They definitely not going to want to speak out about it, because how dare I,
Right.
as an advocate, speak out about me being abused for that I advocate against,
yeah.
Right.
But a
right?
lot of times the advocates are because they have a history or they've been abused. So a lot of times it's almost a given. You have that experience. I became an advocate because I witnessed it. When I was a teenager, I witnessed it. When I was a teenager, I experienced it. So I became an advocate for that reason. Just like with breast cancer awareness, I became an advocate because I witnessed someone pass away from it.
Hmm.
So those that should be a given that somewhere along the line you still healing from that abuse.
Healing from it without setting any boundaries.
Right.
That's how you can go back into it, although because you are an advocate, you're very sensitive to the matter,
Exactly.
Mhm.
and you get to a place that you want to help almost everybody, but you can't.
I know,
What
right?
about trying to help like, you got this, you're going to be okay, like you don't have to act this way, you don't. And then in turn, because you didn't have healthy boundaries, you become abused by an individual due to your lack of boundaries.
Mhm. What's something that you yourself are still challenged with as a result of the abuse from younger years? Like something that's been really difficult to break through and you hadn't conquered it yet.
Probably my I don't really I have a very great coach.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Kelly. I hope she's watching. I have a very great coach. There's nothing that I haven't.
That you're mindful of that you
Well,
hadn't.
no. Let me go back.
Okay.
Um, Being placed into a position where becoming impregnated due to rape, and making the decision to either give birth or
Mhm.
abort.
Can you say more? You said you became pregnant by a rape situation?
Mhm.
Okay.
And then having to make a very tough decision to, at a very young age, do you give birth or do you have this
Yes.
abortion? What do you choose? You choose life or you choose I can't do this. And not having a lot of resources around you to navigate, especially as young, you know, teen
Mhm.
moms, not having enough resources around you to be able to navigate through those negative emotions
Yes.
Yeah.
while establishing a positive outcome can be very challenging, because mind you, when you're in a space that's you're in that space, you can't, once you in it, you in it, you
You're
can't
in it. Yeah.
you can't see your way through it or outside of it because I'm in it.
Yeah.
Yep. Is that the outcome of that choice you made? Is that something that you share publicly or no?
Oh, very publicly.
Okay.
Having abortions is something, that's why our program is more so help moms to be able to let them know if you become impregnated, no matter if it's by force. We have a lot of individuals that come to us that was, sex trafficked.
Okay.
We're here to support you.
Yeah.
I mean, do you share what your choice was back then? Do you ever share that publicly?
I share all of it publicly because that's part of my healing and my journey.
Did
The
you choose to have the baby or to abort?
I chose to abort.
Okay.
That's
Did
true.
you?
So that's something that I always, when you ask if that's, is it something that's in the past that you still carry?
Mm-hmm.
That is something that, so I mentioned earlier, I like, well, no, I can't think of anything. And then I thought of that because that is something that at times that I'm like, I wish I would have had somebody there to be able to educate me a little more, to be able to tell me about different resources that was out there so that I could have chose differently.
So you, when I had an abortion, what I learned later on, and it actually was in church, to name that baby. And
Mhm.
that's how I was able to move past it because that baby had a soul attached to it. So I learned, of course, later on. So I had to name it and then prayed. I can't remember what else I did. It kind of set me free so it doesn't
Oh, wow.
harass me. Yeah. So I want to offer that to you as well.
Thank
It
you.
might be
Thank you.
helpful.
And my comfort, and I'll definitely take that in consideration. My comfort in is to be able to educate as many women as possible about their
Mhm.
choices.
That's so good.
So
Oh, you are
that's like
teaching.
our day to day thing. We have so many people that calls and they just don't know what they want to do and which way they want to take. I'm pregnant. I don't want it. It's not a good time for me. And so it's my journey to be able to share. These are your options and these are your resources, and to be able to better educate them.
I guess we need some advice for people that are listening. What do you tell them to do if they're struggling with domestic violence now?
To be consciously aware of the offense.
Hmm.
Once you become consciously aware of the offense,
Right.
then you're able to know, to be able to seek to know that there's hope. Once I become consciously aware of the offense, that's where I can find hope because I'm not hiding within my own. If I'm true to myself, I don't have to be false to no one else.
Hmm.
That's true. That's
So
good
that's
right
step
there.
number one.
Hmm.
And then that will lead you to gear you to be able to reach out for help, which is help is there.
And is there help, like a toll-free number they can call or anything like that?
The National Domestic Violence Hotline is always 24/7, no matter if it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They will answer, and then they will give you resources that's closest to you.
Okay. Mhm. Wow.
That's definitely a topic that's is not shared a lot, and I'm glad we had this conversation because there are so many people out there suffering in silence, and as caregivers, as family members, as friends, um, be able to, you should look for signs, and if you suspect someone's being abused, be gentle about it, and ask them, can I help you? What can I do to help you? Get to a safe space
Yeah,
without being judgmental, because a lot of times people don't talk because they know you throwing your, I knew he was no good. People don't want to hear that when they going through.
yeah.
Yeah. How can they find you? Your social media handles?
Yeah, go to our website, www.iamfote.org, or on Facebook at I Am FOTE, and you will see it from ordinary to extraordinary.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you
Yes,
for
You're a
having me.
blessing. I
great
appreciate you.
conversation. And of course, because I know you just launched your latest book, went live like last Sunday, was it?
Yep, and I got Amazon's #1 new release.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
So good.
Band-Aid job and heal for real.
Yeah,
that's
for
awesome.
real.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And we can find you.
You can find me on Prosperity Queen on all social media handles. On YouTube, you can find me at Angie Kearns, the PQ.
And of course, I work ministering with children, never accepting negativity. And you can find us at nanresourcectr.org. Our books are also available dealing with grief and emotional wellness for children. It's giving season. Be sure to, is your business nonprofit as well?
Yes, it's a
It's a
nonprofit.
501c. We got these 501cs out there. It's giving season. People donate, 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 because this good work, this is good ground you sowing into. And we can use every dime to help heal these folks.
I agree.
Yes,
Thank
indeed.
you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in, those who watched and those who watched on the replay. There's some great deep stuff. So, and if you need any assistance, please reach out to any one of us. We'll be more than glad to walk you through the steps of healing.
Absolutely. Thanks, y'all. Yeah, have a good night.
I have a prosperous week on purpose.
Indeed. Bye.
Bye bye.